Sometimes a smile isn't a reflection of the soul. It's just a well-rehearsed mask. A beautiful curtain that hides the darkness no one sees. Rumi warned, "Do not approach those who keep their hearts locked, for even their silence is a wall." And yet, how many times have you been carried away by a smile? How many times have you believed that look was sincere, that laugh was real, when deep down it was just a disguise for a cold, closed heart? The world is full of smiles that shine on the outside but carry storms within. Full of people who master the art of appearing to be but never dare to be. They smile to gain your trust, to make you let your guard down. But when you least expect it, you realize you're standing before a castle without doors. Have you ever felt this? That strange sensation of standing before someone who seems close yet unreachable? A closed heart doesn't open to your embraces, doesn't respond to your love, doesn't welcome your truths. It just leaves you prowling the surface, begging for an entrance that will never come. And Rumi knew, when someone lives behind emotional walls, even the sweetest gesture can taste bitter. Their smile isn't light, it's armor. A silent way of keeping the world at bay while pretending to let you in. Perhaps you've felt the pain of giving yourself to someone like this. You offer words, presence, soul, but nothing gets through. It's like talking to glass. You see the other person, but you can't truly touch them. And the worst part? They keep smiling. They keep presenting themselves as warm, while inside, their hearts remain locked away. This kind of smile is dangerous because it confuses. It tricks your instincts. It makes you believe you're safe when in fact, you're just being kept at a distance. Rumi also said that the wound is the place where the light enters, but those who close their hearts don't let the light in, and they don't let yours reach them either. People like this carry their own darkness, but they project onto you the illusion that everything is fine. And you, without realizing it, lose yourself trying to break down doors that will never open. And this is where the risk lies. When you get involved with someone who smiles but doesn't feel it. When you believe in the expression but ignore the energy. Because a smile can be trained, but the heart can't. A smile can be faked, but the soul never lies. Maybe right now you're thinking about someone. Maybe their image popped into your mind before I even finished this sentence. And if so, pay attention, because what we're about to talk about may open your eyes to something you've been avoiding. If, while listening to these words, a face or a name popped into your mind, it wasn't by chance. Your soul recognizes signs that your reason tries to ignore. That's precisely why you can't just watch this video as if it were just another one. This content isn't meant to be consumed and forgotten. It's a mirror. And perhaps today is the day you'll finally allow yourself to see what's always been right in front of you. So, I want you to participate. I want you to write in the comments now what your heart felt when you heard this message. No need to name names, no need to over-explain. Just let your soul speak. Leave in the comments. I recognize smiles that hide walls. This phrase isn't just a symbol. It's a choice. It's the moment you declare to yourself that you're awake so you don't fall into the same trap again. And if this truth touched you, if it somehow resonated with your story, don't leave without leaving a like. This is spreading this message to others who also need to open their eyes. So subscribe and turn on notifications. Here, each video is a deep conversation with your heart. And you know, some conversations can't be postponed. Have you ever trusted someone who seemed open, generous, even warm, but over time you realized you never truly entered their heart? It's as if there was always a half-open, inviting door, but when you approached to walk through, it closed softly and firmly at the same time. And you stood there, on the threshold, trying to understand what was happening. The truth is, some smiles are like glass windows. They let you see a beautiful part, but they don't allow you to truly touch what's inside. They make themselves available. Listen to your stories, participate in your days, but deep down there's a silent distance that never diminishes. Have you ever felt this kind of disconnect? That strange mix of physical presence and emotional absence? It's a kind of cold that comes not from the skin but from the soul. People with closed hearts don't necessarily appear cold in an obvious way. Often their coldness is delicate, almost imperceptible. They know how to smile at the right moments. They know how to say everything's okay with a convincing expression, but they keep their true essence well out of reach. And the most confusing thing is that, on the outside, everything seems normal. That's why this is an invisible problem. Because there are no glaring signs, no arguments, no confessions. just a subtle silence that grows between you until it becomes impossible to ignore. And in this process, those on the outside begin to blame themselves. Is it me who doesn't know how to approach? Did I do something wrong? You try to adjust, try to prove yourself trustworthy, try to offer more presence, more love, more understanding. But none of this breaks through the wall, because the problem isn't your surrender, but the other person's invisible decision to keep their heart closed. It's like watering a plant that will never bloom, not because you lack care, but because the soil isn't ready to receive it. This dynamic slowly erodes your self-esteem. You begin to question yourself, to doubt your worth, to feel like you need to become someone different to finally be accepted. But Rumi said, "You are not here to shrink into someone else's world." And this is one of the hardest lessons to learn, because when you're emotionally invested, the tendency is to fight harder, try harder, insist harder, and in the process, you don't realize you're losing yourself. The smile that hides coldness is dangerous precisely because it's convincing. It makes you believe there's something there to be conquered, that you just have to persist a little more to cross that barrier. But in reality, it's a curtain that moves with the wind, only to give the illusion that the path is clear. When you reach out your hand, you realize the passage is still closed. It's like walking toward a horizon that never gets closer, no matter how far you walk. And the silent pain of this experience lies not only in the separation, but in the confusion it creates within you. It's feeling rejected without having been openly rejected. It's living in a relationship where the words say yes, but the energy says no. It's receiving gestures of affection that, however beautiful, never have enough depth to reach your soul. And it's in this empty space between what's shown and what really is that emotional exhaustion sets in. Maybe you're experiencing something like this right now. Maybe there's someone in your life whose smile no longer warms you like it used to, or who never truly warmed you. Someone you talk to but always feels like something's missing, as if an important part of them is forever out of reach. This isn't your imagination. This is your soul's perception telling you there's a wall there. And here's the uncomfortable truth. No matter how hard you try, you can't force a heart to open. The most you'll do is wear out your own. That's why recognizing these signs is so important. Because when you recognize that a smile is just a shield, you protect yourself from the frustration of trying to find warmth where there's only distance. I want you to reflect on this honestly. Think about the people you hold close. Is there someone who always seems present but never truly lets you in? Is there a smile that, deep down, you know isn't a reflection of the soul? If so, write the following sentence in the comments. I've seen smiles that hide ice. This is your way of declaring that you now recognize the invisible problem and will no longer ignore the signs. The danger lies not only in those who lie with words, but in those who live locked away from love without even realizing it. It's a kind of silent, profound blockage that doesn't reveal itself in outright lies or explicit betrayals, but rather in a lack of surrender, in a refusal to be vulnerable. And this refusal doesn't manifest itself as a direct no, but as a constant almost, like one step forward and two steps back. These people smile to the world, appear socially open, but they keep their most intimate essence hidden in emotional vaults to which no one holds the key. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters, but those who close their hearts flee from their own healing." This means that for some, acknowledging pain and opening themselves to affection would be like touching a wound that still throbs. They don't want to feel. They don't want to revisit memories. They don't want to risk being hurt again. So they choose the seemingly safest path, emotional isolation disguised as normality. But this safety is a prison. And those who reach out, believing they've found true connection, end up realizing too late that they've entered a labyrinth with no way out. The spiritual root of this blockage often lies in the denial of one's own vulnerability. To open one's heart, one must accept that there is pain, that there is fear, that there is an unresolved past. And those who don't face this choose to live like an actor on stage. They play the role well, but never show the real script. They may even be kind, they may even listen to your stories, they may even say they care, but all of this happens in a controlled, calculated way, never allowing love to touch the most sensitive spot. This is why the bonds created with people like this are false bonds. Not false in the sense of non-existent, but false because they don't sustain full reciprocity. It's like holding onto a rope that's only attached on one side. No matter how hard you hold it, there's no real connection to maintain. This kind of connection empties us because, while we give ourselves completely, on the other side there are only fragments of presence. It's a giving without receiving, a flow that doesn't return, and the soul feels this even before the mind comprehends it. And there's an important detail. Those who live this way don't always do so out of conscious malice. Often it's a defense mechanism learned years ago, perhaps since childhood. For them, a closed heart is a shield against abandonment, rejection, and the feeling of not being enough. But in the process of protecting themselves, they end up hurting those who try to get close. It's as if the fear of losing is so great that they prefer not to truly gain anything. When we look at this spiritually, we realize that fleeing vulnerability is actually fleeing the healing process itself. Pain that isn't confronted doesn't disappear. It simply hides and creates barriers. Rumi understood this profoundly when he said that the wound is the place where light enters. The light here isn't just romantic love or the affection of friends, but consciousness itself, the expansion of the soul, the clarity that transforms. Those who close their hearts refuse to allow this light to penetrate, and so they remain trapped in a repetitive cycle of superficial relationships and unfinished feelings. The cruelest thing is that, to outsiders, this barrier isn't visible right away. The smile, the pleasant words, the initial contact, all of it is deceiving. Only over time does the person begin to realize that, no matter how hard they try, they can never reach the depth necessary for a real exchange. And this realization is accompanied by profound emotional fatigue, because it's exhausting to invest energy where there's no room to receive it. When you're facing someone with a closed heart, it doesn't matter how much you show love, patience, or understanding. True reciprocity only happens when there's openness on both sides, and without this openness, the relationship becomes an emotional monologue. You talk, you give, you build, and the other person only receives, never giving back in the same measure. It's like trying to fill a container with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much water you add, it will never remain. This constant emptying affects not only the relationship but also how you begin to see yourself. The lack of response makes you question your worth, doubt your importance, and even wonder if you're asking for too much. But in reality, all you want is something essential, a real connection, without masks, without walls, where there is mutual surrender. And perhaps you've experienced this more than once. Perhaps you've encountered closed hearts at different points in your life, and without realizing it, you're repeating a pattern. Identifying this pattern is the first step to breaking it. And this identification begins with an honest question. Are you in a relationship with someone who truly wants to open themselves up to love, or just someone who pretends to be available? If this question made sense to you, I want you to leave the following sentence in the comments. I recognize hearts that run away from the light, because this statement is more than an observation. It is the beginning of an awakening. What no one told you is that protecting your heart doesn't mean building walls so high that not even light can enter. Protecting isn't about hiding. Protecting is about having the discernment to choose who you open the door to your soul to. It's about knowing that not everyone who knocks on your door has come to enter with love, and that some come just to bask in the warmth you offer, never intending to stay. There's a profound difference between closing yourself off to avoid pain and protecting yourself to receive what's true. A difference that life often only teaches us after we've already been hurt. The problem is that many confuse shielding with wisdom. They believe that to avoid suffering, one must completely shut oneself away. But a locked heart doesn't protect itself. It suffocates. It stops feeling what hurts, but it also stops feeling what heals. Rumi knew this when he said that the wound is the place where the light enters. The light here is true love, genuine connection, affection that doesn't demand perfection, but demands presence. When you close yourself off to love, you also close yourself off to your own transformation. The cure isn't in creating an insurmountable fortress, but in learning to recognize those who already live behind walls. And this is harder than it seems because those who live this way have learned to create very convincing facades. They may smile sweetly, look you in the eye, say the right words, but there's always a detail, a small space of absence amidst their presence, that betrays that their door isn't truly open. Recognizing these signs is like fine-tuning the soul's perception. It's feeling that, no matter how many gestures and words there are, something essential isn't manifesting. It's noticing that conversations never reach the deepest point, that good moments always have an invisible limit, as if there were a line you can't cross. And the sooner you realize this, the sooner you'll free yourself from the trap of trying to melt an iceberg that was placed there by choice. The hidden key is not to waste energy trying to convince someone to open up. Truly willing hearts don't need coaxing. They may be afraid, they may hesitate, but when faced with genuine love, they choose to take the risk. And when that choice isn't there, no matter how hard you try, the wall will remain. Your mission isn't to climb that wall, but to understand that your life is much greater than the time spent standing before it. And that takes courage. Courage to say no to connections that don't nourish you. Courage to accept that not everyone will offer you what you offer. Courage to recognize that there are people who, even though they're by your side, have already decided to remain distant. This courage isn't coldness, it's self-love. It's knowing that your energy, your presence, and your soul are too precious to be wasted where there's no space to receive them. Often, the mistake isn't opening your heart, but opening it to someone who doesn't intend to truly enter. And that's where the importance of self-preservation comes in. It's not about being inaccessible, but about being selective. It's about observing attitudes, sensing their energy, and understanding whether that person is truly willing to walk with you, or if they just want to warm up a bit and then move on. Rumi also said, "You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop." This reminder is crucial to understanding that you don't need to shrink to fit into someone else's life. The key is to open yourself to those who recognize the immensity that exists within you and want to stay, not just visit. It's about allowing yourself to live intensely, but also with discernment. Maybe you've spent years trying to open doors that weren't yours to open. Maybe you've worn yourself out trying to reach hearts that were already determined to remain closed. And in the process, you've believed the problem was within you. But the truth is that your sensitivity, your ability to love and surrender aren't flaws. They're treasures. They just need to be offered in the right place, to the right people. This is liberation, understanding that it's not your job to carry someone to the point where they decide to open up, that your role is to live openly yet consciously, that it's possible to protect your heart without closing it off. And that, most of the time, true protection lies in quickly recognizing who isn't ready to receive who you are. I want you to reflect on this now. Think about how many times you've tried to break through walls that weren't yours. How many times you've persisted where there was only resistance. And if this reflection resonated with you, write the following sentence in the comments. I choose to open my heart with wisdom. Because this is the declaration that you will no longer get lost trying to find a home where there are only walls. Perhaps you've confided in someone who seemed always willing to share lighthearted moments, laugh together and participate in everyday conversations, but who somehow avoided any deeper dives. At first, you interpreted this as shyness, a reserved personality trait, even a caution not to invade certain emotional territories. But over time, you realized it wasn't shyness. It was absence. It was a subtle way of maintaining distance even when close. This absence doesn't reveal itself all at once. It seeps into small moments. You try to talk about something that touched you deeply, and the conversation veers off to a neutral topic. You share a weakness and the response is a quick, almost automatic comment that doesn't welcome, doesn't deepen, doesn't truly connect. Little by little, you realize a pattern. Conversations only flow as long as they remain on the surface. Laughter is easy, but the silence that should be comfortable becomes a heavy void. The difference is that when the heart is open, even silence becomes presence. When there is mutual surrender, you can be beside someone without saying anything and still feel understood, welcomed, connected by something invisible. But when this internal blockage exists, silence becomes distance. It doesn't connect, it separates. And this distance isn't measured in meters but in emotional absence. Perhaps you've tried to break through this barrier by offering more of yourself. Perhaps you've strived to create opportunities for closeness, believing that all it took was time for the connection to deepen. But in doing so, you've begun to feel a strange weight, as if you were carrying the relationship alone, as if the other person is always ready to receive, but never willing to offer more than a partial presence. This is where many people get lost. They confuse coexistence with intimacy, superficial exchange with true affection, and this confusion is dangerous because it keeps you trapped in something that seems real but isn't. It's like holding a beautiful photograph. It captures a moment, but doesn't live with you. It's static, without movement. without evolution. And while you believe that's enough, you fail to realize that you're living with less than you deserve. Perhaps now you can recall concrete situations. That time you were feeling fragile and sought support, but received only a "it'll pass" without looking you in the eye. Or that moment you tried to share a dream or a fear and felt like the person was just waiting for the conversation to end. These episodes don't seem so serious in isolation, but when repeated, they reveal a truth that's hard to accept. There's no real willingness to connect deeply. And here comes a truth that hurts, but liberates. When someone truly wants to be present, there's no fear of depth. This person may even feel uncomfortable on certain topics, may not have all the right words, but they don't run away. They stay. They try. They make space for you to be whole, even if it means dealing with vulnerabilities. This is the difference between absence and true presence. People with open hearts don't need perfection to connect. They don't measure a relationship by the number of laughs, but by the ability to navigate silences and shadows together. And that's what sustains true bonds. The courage to remain even when the other person is stripped of any mask, revealing their rawest and most real selves. That's why it's so important to learn to identify when silence around someone is disguised acceptance or abandonment. Because often, what keeps us in relationships like this is the hope that, over time, absence will become presence. But this change doesn't happen unless the other person makes a choice. You can create all the spaces, but if the other person doesn't want to fill them, they will remain empty. Absence disguised as presence is one of the loneliest experiences one can experience. It's deceptive because it keeps you physically accompanied but emotionally isolated, and this isolation is even more painful because it occurs within a bond that should nurture, but in practice only consumes. And perhaps, as you listen to this, you're thinking of someone. Maybe you're realizing that the shyness you've justified for so long was never about insecurity, but about unavailability. And if this is happening now, pay attention, because this awareness is the first step in deciding what to do with this type of relationship. I want you to record this perception symbolically. Write the following sentence in the comments. I know the difference between silence and absence. This is your way of saying that you now understand what used to confuse you, and that you will no longer accept the lack of presence disguised as company. You don't need to fear closed hearts. You don't need to live in fear of encountering them because they will always exist. What you need to understand is that it's not your mission to build your life, your peace, and your happiness within someone who has already decided to remain locked away. It's not your job to break locks that refuse to be opened. You can choose where you build, with whom you build, and in what soil you decide to plant your energy. The great shift in consciousness lies precisely in this, realizing that it's not about trying to change the other, but about protecting the sacred space that exists within you. Rumi wrote, "Do not settle for love that does not open itself." And this is not just poetic advice. It is an urgent reminder not to settle for emotional crumbs, not to normalize relationships where your presence is welcomed, but never fully embraced. Accepting halves disguised as wholes is one of the fastest ways to lose connection with your own essence. When you settle for little, you begin to believe you deserve little. And this is an invisible but powerful prison. You deserve a complete presence. You deserve someone who is there not only in body but also in soul. You deserve gazes that don't look away when you open up, silences that comfort rather than alienate, gestures that don't need to be perfect to be genuine. And above all, you deserve relationships where affection doesn't need to be constantly questioned, measured, or tested. True presence doesn't require proof. It's felt. It's felt in everyday life. It manifests itself even in the simplest details. When you understand this, you begin to change the way you position yourself toward others. You stop wasting energy trying to prove you're worthy of love and start directing that energy toward finding someone who is already willing to love fully. And here's an important point. Loving fully doesn't mean being flawless, but it does mean choosing to be present, even when it's difficult, even when vulnerability demands courage. This awareness also frees you from the fear of loneliness, because you realize that being alone is no worse than being in bad company. You discover that there is more peace in the silence of your own presence than in the empty noise of a relationship that doesn't open itself to true exchange. And in this process, something powerful happens. You begin to attract people who are on the same level of openness as you. Your energy shifts, your outlook changes, and your soul makes it clear that it no longer accepts superficial relationships. It's not about creating a list of impossible demands or living under the illusion that someone will be perfect for you. It's about understanding that reciprocity and surrender are essential, and that anything less is just a distant echo of what you deserve to experience. Because love that doesn't open up is love that doesn't blossom, and you weren't made to live in gardens where the flowers are plastic. This shift in consciousness isn't easy. It requires letting go, accepting that some people will be left behind, facing the pain of realizing that not everyone you want around you is ready to walk alongside you. But at the same time, it gives you something priceless: clarity. And with clarity, you stop deluding yourself with pretty facades and start searching for the essence. You stop wasting time trying to salvage relationships that never truly existed and start investing in what's solid, what has roots, what weathers the storms. When this shift occurs, you stop being a prisoner of the stories others tell you and start listening to the story their energy reveals. You stop believing only words and begin to feel the coherence between what is said and what is experienced. This perception is like a natural filter that removes closed hearts before they have a chance to sap your light. And perhaps at this point, you're already identifying people in your life who never offered their full presence. Perhaps you've noticed that, in some relationships, you've grown accustomed to living on crumbs. And now, as you look at this, a question arises that cannot be ignored. How much longer are you willing to wait for doors that may never open? I want you to anchor this reflection by leaving the following phrase in the comments: I don't accept emotional halves. This is your declaration that you understand the importance of this shift in consciousness, and that, from now on, you will only build where there is true openness. And if you stuck around until the end, subscribe to the channel now to continue this journey of healing, awakening, and awareness that we're building together. Leave your like so this message can reach others who need to hear it today. Now, the next video is showing on screen. It will delve even deeper into this topic and may provide answers you didn't even know you were looking for. Click through and continue this conversation with me. Your journey doesn't end here.